And today is All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Even, of course, where we get the word Halloween. And as I shared this morning, it has its roots, of course, in a sacred tradition, even if we think of it as a secular holiday. Even trick-or-treating has sacred roots. And what I think is fascinating is more than one culture has celebrated this kind of All Saints' Day in antiquity from different parts of the globe. The Celts have it at this time on October 31st in Ireland, Scotland, Britain, and other parts of Europe, as well as the Mexican culture and the Mayan culture and Dia de los Muertos, which dates back to the ancient Aztecs. Were those Aztecs and those Celts talking to each other? I don't know, but there's something about this time, this season of year, where there are many different cultures that honor the ancestors. And in Celtic tradition, it was called a thin time, which is like a thin place, which is that time when it's as if heaven and earth come a little bit closer to each other. And we can sense heaven here on earth more profoundly. And the ancient Celts believed that this time of year was a season when heaven came closer to earth. And we therefore could be in kind of greater touch with our loved ones who has crossed over. Now this might sound a little spooky to us, but if we stop and think about it, as Christians it shouldn't really necessarily, because if we truly believe in an afterlife and believe that our loved ones are in heaven, would it not make sense that we can still keep a heart connection with them? That we can still somehow maybe even sense their presence? Not in a seance or ghost haunting of a hotel kind of way, but within our hearts, within our love. And there are certain people who have greater sensitivity to that, and I've, in my ministry, heard countless stories of people who have had a sense of the presence of a loved one, which just confirms to us that those who we love continue to live on. And again, most cultures have a way of honoring the ancestors. Certainly African traditions. Again, Celtic, Mexican, Native American. And it's my understanding that the Chinese culture also has a way of honoring the ancestors. Is that true? Yeah. And I think it's interesting that Christian missionaries have done so much good. But so often, sometimes missionaries would come into a particular culture and then say that part of the culture's heritage was somehow unchristian. And this is one of those examples where I'm not really sure what's not Christian about honoring our ancestors. I think there are ways that we can glean and do both. I remember being very moved by a story from my colleague, Burston Choi, whose grandparents were Buddhist, and when Burston decided to become a Christian, his grandfather was very sad. And he said, "Grandfather, why are you so sad?" And he said, "Because no one will come to honor me then at my grave if you are Christian. No one will come to offer incense. I will be forgotten as an ancestor." And Burston assured his grandfather that he would still come, he would still offer incense, and that he could do that as a Christian and hold both. So I don't know what your beliefs are about any particular cultural pieces, but I do think as Christians it's not unchristian to celebrate that our loved ones are in heaven and that there's a part of them that continues to live on. Chief Seattle has a quote that I like to repeat often, and it is, "There is no death, only a change of worlds." There is no death, only a change of worlds. And to me, this is in keeping with our Christian understanding of the resurrection. It is a huge transition. It is the great transition. But our soul and our spirit continue to live on. I remember when I was sitting at my father's bedside when he died, and I had this profound sense of his spirit transitioning out of his body. And I had this image, it might sound like a strange image, but it's the one that I've stayed with, of when we are all here like this, walking and talking, we're kind of like this rocket that's connected to the rocket booster. And that when we cross over, the rocket booster of our body leaves and the spirit and soul keep going. And we separate from one another, but that spirit and soul keeps going. And I could feel it palpably in the room. I could sense my father's transition. And I thought, wow, that spirit and soul of my dad that I knew when we were walking and talking, knew when I was praying for him on earth, that part of his spirit and soul is still the same. It's just in the heavenly realm now. It's just in a different place. It's transitioned, but it's still there. And that has given me comfort. And to me, that is the comfort that the Christian scriptures offer us. That death has lost its sting. That death is not the end. It is a transition to a gateway, to a new beginning. And even though the transition is profound, I believe we can still maintain a connection with those we love in our hearts, in our spirits. Ultimately, death is a transition. And therefore, we are in fact surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses. And that's what we celebrate in this scripture passage in Hebrews 12. And it is built upon, as Norman pointed out today, the entire chapter of chapter 11. We didn't read the entire thing, but it's a litany of person after person after person, and how God worked in their very ordinary and normal lives to bring about great things. And after that entire chapter, then we start chapter 12 and says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us go on and be inspired to keep running the race. So it's almost like when I did track ages ago in high school, I would do relays, right? And you're running, and someone hands you the baton, you take the baton, and you keep running. But then your teammates are still there to cheer you on and go, wow, quick, come on, keep going, finish the race. And that's what this great cloud of witnesses, the cloud of witnesses are those who have passed on before us. And it's almost like the sense that they're still encouraging us, rooting us on. Okay, come on, keep going, keep running that race. And if we were inspired by them, then it is natural that we would take that torch and keep going with it. Take that torch, take that light into the world now. And to me, that is an inspiration. We are called to continue to be saints today in the modern world, inspired by their lives. Now again, that word saint can be problematic to us as Protestants because we think you have to perform through miracles and do all these things in a certain way. We don't use the word as much in Protestants. After the Reformation, it changed because that was one of the things in the Reformation. Protestants thought, there are just too many saints. Can't keep track of them all. There's like one on every Sunday. And we're not sure about the same thing anyway, so we kind of do away with it. I think it's interesting that the very day that Luther nailed the 95 Theses on the door of Wittenberg was October 31st. Did you know that? I'd forgotten that until I looked it up again. And he did that on purpose because he knew so many people would be there for All Saints' Day the next day. He would have the widest audience he could possibly have, so nail him on the door the night before so that when everybody arrives the next day, everybody will see it. And so we have this interesting kind of connection to our lineage in the Reformed faith as well as to the foundation of All Saints' Day when we celebrate that today. And it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect, but that we can be inspired by the great cloud of witnesses to continue to live that out. So to me, one way that we honor that the torch continues, is to light a candle. And I want to share a poem about that. And then in a few moments, we'll invite us to come forward as you are able to light a candle, and I'll light the first one. And then you can take one of the taper candles and take it from the light and light another one of the tea lights. I'll just ask us to each just light one tea light so that there's enough for everybody, hopefully. If you have more than one person you're thinking of, you could think of more than one person. But I'm really going to invite us to not just do this by rote. Not just, okay, I'll get up, I'll light a candle, I'll sit down. But really think of the whole act of moving as a prayer. As you approach, it's a prayer. As you light the candle, I invite you to linger for a minute and think. It could be a loved one in your own life who has passed on, or it might be someone who inspires you, someone who has been part of that inspiration, that great cloud of witnesses for you, that has been an inspiration that you want to honor. And just to take a moment to reflect on that, to thank God for that person, maybe even to pray for them for a moment. And then you can take the taper candle and pass it to someone else that they can light. You can have more than one person up at a time. You can also come around behind to light the candles and back rather than reach over the flame. But I invite us just to make all of this a prayer.